and they'll pop up right here once they're...
Yeah, so the channels are on, you can see. Right.
Yeah.
Here.
Yep. So hello, it's Joan, and I wanted to show you something really cool. And we're going to be sewing with the Bernina. I know we've talked about many times how I do binding because I sew both sides at once, and so I wanted to show you how to do it with your Bernina. And today I'm going to introduce, it's the 38 foot from Bernina, and we're going to be sewing on the Bernina 790. So the cool thing about this foot is, if you look at it, it's sometimes called an uneven foot, and you can see that the foot is actually lower on one side than it is the other. And this side right here is going to ride along our binding when we get it going. So I'm just going to go ahead and attach it. I've already got my machine threaded up and ready to go. I set my stitch length for 1.8 millimeters, and we're just going to get started here. So one of the things that I always do with my quilts before I bind them is I serge the edges off with my serger. I really recommend you do that, especially if you're going to use this method, because it's going to make everything nice and tidy when you start sewing everything together. So I'm going to measure off about 8 inches. So you have this nice little ruler on your screen, it's actually closer to 7. So we'll say it's 7 inches, and that's where I'm going to start sewing. And so I'm just going to open this up and attach it right there. And when we're done, I'm going to talk about the tools you need to make this. So one of the things, we want to stop with our needle down. And let's just slide this up right here. And I'm just making sure that we're just kind of straight on here. This doesn't have to be perfect. Hi, Dawn. And we're just going to slide this up right here, and so if you look, this is kind of lined up really close with that foot. And it's going to do a couple of locking stitches, and then we're going to take off. And then I like to just stop with my needle down because it's going to hold everything in place. I'll move it back so you can see just a little bit more of what I'm doing here. There we go. Perfect. Oop, we got it on turtle mode. And this is really nice because you can bind a quilt so fast. And when you're done, you're ready to be done. At least I'm ready to be done with a quilt. And we are going to sew all the way up to this edge right here, and then we're going to stop. I'm going to get really close, maybe one more stitch. I'm going to back, and then we're going to cut. Okay. So when we're ready to pivot, we're just going to see how all of this is just nice and tidy right up to the edge. We're just going to open this up and push it over. And look how nice it makes that miter right there. And so I'm not even going to pin this. Look at the back. Look how nice that looks. It's a nice sharp miter like we love. And so one of the things that I like to do, because we have this bolt to sew over, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it under my foot, but I'm not going to put it right at the miter where it's joined. I'm actually going to start, I'm going to put my foot down just by pushing down on the presser foot, take my locking stitches, and then I'm going to sew backwards. Get it lined up. And then I'm going to sew backwards. I don't think I'm making stitches. I think I cut it off too short. And then sew forward. Nope, I'm not making stitches. Hang on. I think my tail on my bobbin is too short. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to check this again. Close my air. Check this again to make sure it's nice miter, all tucked in. And we're going to set our foot down a little bit forward of where we're going to start sewing. And we want to stop with our presser foot down, and then we're going to sew backwards to where that miter is. And then take off and go forward. And then we're just going to finish out the rest of this row and do the same thing again. And as I'm going, I'm using my needle down to just kind of line everything up and make sure it's just kind of seated. Again, we're going to sew all the way to the edge. Take a couple of stitches backwards just to lock those in place and cut. We're going to fold this over. Let's take a look at how cool our last one came out. See, look how sharp that corner is. There's the other side, all tucked in, no loose parts that we have to go back and refix. So let's do the same thing with this one. And then we're going to go all the way around the quilt, and then I'm going to show you kind of a cheater method that I use to join. And so I'm just kind of making sure, eyeballing. If you wanted to pin this, it's not really necessary. So when I put my foot down, I'm going to put it down like right about here in reference to the miter. And then we're going to sew backwards. Give me a gear error. Okay. And it is stuck. Well, you know, it wouldn't be a true video without it. So let's do some troubleshooting here and find out where we are stuck. Yeah. There we go. Wrapped around itself. Let's trim that off. That never happens. Any other time, ever. Pop that bobbin in there. This is one of those messages that I always end with. Check your thread path. This one is a check your thread path to solve the problem. So trim that, close that. Pull this out. Okay. Let's try this one more time. Get it folded, and then we're going to start a little bit further away than the front of our, and we're unthreaded. Love that about this machine, the automatic needle threader. Okay. Okay, and now we're just going to sew backwards right up to that miter. And take off. This is a smaller quilt, so it won't take very long to finish it. But even if you're doing a really large quilt, you can finish pretty quickly using this method. Okay. Let's make our second to the last pivot. 2 more of these. And we're just opening that up, folding it over just like that. Love how sharp that miter looks. And I'm just kind of holding on to this. Gonna make that a little bit sharper on that side. Right there. And then we're gonna slide it backwards, just right up under that foot. Okay. Take my locking stitches, because I think that's where I messed up earlier. And then I'm going to sew backwards till I get to that miter, and then take off and sew forward. Again, we're stopping with our needle down to make sure that we can hold this in place while we're just lining the rest of this binding up. Almost there. And you're going to love this little cheat method, so be sure and watch till the end here. Right up to the edge. Let's take a couple of back stitches, cut, let's make our miter. All of this, let's turn. All of this under the foot. Let's take our locking stitches, and then we're going to sew backwards to that miter. Now we're getting close to the end here where we're going to join. So I'm going to sew to about right here. And then I'm going to use some locking stitches, and I'm going to lock that in place. So back stitch a couple and then trim it. And so this is the part that's really cool about this binding method, is how do you join? How do you make these look perfect right here? And so the way that I do it is I always just take a piece. I'm going to try to join like right here in the middle. So I'm going to just cut this off, and I'm going to kind of line this up like as if it were going to be quilted right there. Okay. And then I'm going to open this piece up. and I'm going to line it up right with the edge. So with the edge right here of the binding that's cut and attached. So see that right there? Lining it up right there. And then I'm going to take this other piece right here and I'm going to line it up. And so kind of hard, a little bit hard to see, but right there is the edge. So you can see it right there is the edge. We're going to actually just kind of with our fingernail mark that spot right there and cut it off. And so I've done this many times and it always works out. So we're hoping that it's going to work out this time too. So in order to join them, we're going to take both pieces and we're going to hold them up like this, and then we're going to put this one over. I'll do it again. So you're going to hold both pieces up and fold this one over, and then we're going to open everything. And then we're going to put it under the needle. And I always like to say the arrow is going to point towards the throat, and the arrow is all of this. So this is the side that doesn't have anything joined to it. And so we're just going to start it. And this doesn't have to be perfect. And then I'm going to pick everything up and make sure all my pieces are open underneath and lined up. And we're going to sew to this spot right here. And cut. Now before I cut anything off, I like to actually just kind of hold it and make sure that it's going to line up and everything's going to work before I go and trim all of this off. And I do have a little bit of a pucker right there. I think it's going to be okay. I'm just going to leave it. So we're just going to trim this like that. And then I'm just going to finger press this way and then fold all of these seams back over. I'm not going to try to line it up yet. I'm going to put it under the machine, let the machine hold that steady, and then I'm going to clip that one. Nope, I'm going to leave it. It's not worth cutting. So everything lines up perfectly, and then we're just going to sew until we're crossing over our previous stitches. Do a couple of back stitches and cut, and then our binding you're going to need, if you have a Bernina machine, you're going to need the number 38 foot. And this is the 1-inch clover bias tape maker. And so you're going to cut your binding strips 2 inches, and then you're going to use this and you're going to press them and then press them again so that you have bias like this. So this clover is going to make your bias tape like this with your seams open on the inside, and then you're going to press it closed. I do like to use a little bit of starch because I like to have this a little bit stiff, and when I'm sewing it just keeps everything tidy. But you can see this is an easy way for you to finish your binding on your quilts, and it looks fantastic. You've got nice sharp corners on both sides. You just go back and trim up your little threads, and then this is ready to go. Okay, let me know what you think in the comments below. We're going to have links to everything, all of the clover, and then the number 38 foot in the comments down below. And we'll see you next time. And as always, check your thread path, oil your hook, and check your